The Deep Space Monitoring Station on the dark side of the moon picked up the signal at 0347 hours. Lieutenant Bobby Chun was sipping his third cup of coffee when the alien transmission burst through the static. The voice that came through the speakers was not human, but the universal translator made the words clear enough to send chills down his spine. This is Ambassador Cathara of the Zephyrian Collective, broadcasting on all frequencies to any civilized species willing to listen. We are dying. The Vorthic Empire has consumed 17 star systems in the past cycle. They strip worlds bare of all life, converting organic matter into more soldiers for their endless war machine. We have fought them for 3 years, but our defenses are failing. The Kepler 442 system will fall within days. If there is anyone out there with the strength to help us, please respond before it is too late. Bobby's hands shook as he reached for the emergency communication button. He had been monitoring space signals for 2 years, mostly picking up cosmic background radiation and the occasional automated probe data. This was the first time he had heard genuine terror in an alien voice. The Zephyrians had been humanity's first peaceful contact with extraterrestrial life. They had shared technology, art, and stories about their beautiful crystal cities floating in the clouds of gas giants. Within minutes, the signal was being analyzed at Luna Base's main command center. Captain Jake Morrison stood before the massive viewing screen, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the tactical display. At 45, he had spent most of his adult life preparing for theoretical alien conflicts. The reality was far worse than any simulation they had run. "Sir, we're getting confirmation from 3 other monitoring stations," reported Sergeant Katie Walsh from her position at the communications console. "The transmission is genuine. Signal analysis shows it's coming from the Zephyrian homeworld of Ethros Prime." Morrison studied the star charts showing the affected systems. Each red dot represented a world that had been completely consumed by the Vorthak forces. The pattern of destruction showed a methodical approach, with the enemy moving from system to system like a plague of locusts. The Zephyrians' homeworld was directly in their path. "Get me Admiral Hayes immediately," Morrison ordered. Priority 1 classification. We need the emergency council assembled within the hour. The call went out across Earth's communication networks. Admiral Lisa Hayes was pulled from a strategy meeting in Geneva. General Marcus Bell left his family dinner in Texas. Dr. Helen Carter abandoned her research at the Titan facility. Within 3 hours, the most powerful military and scientific minds on Earth were gathered in the secure conference room beneath Luna Base. The debate was intense and immediate. General Bell paced the length of the room, his boots clicking against the metal floor. "We barely have enough ships to patrol our own solar system," he argued. "The Zephyrians are talking about an enemy that has consumed 17 civilizations. What makes us think we can succeed where they failed?" Dr. Carter pulled up holographic displays showing the limited intelligence they had gathered about the Vorthak. "From what we can analyze, these beings are not just warriors. They're biological machines designed for one purpose: consuming and converting organic life. Their ships are grown, not built. They adapt to whatever weapons are used against them. That's exactly why we need to help," Admiral Hayes replied, her voice cutting through the tension. "If we let them finish with the Zephyrians, how long before they turn their attention to Earth? Better to fight them now, while we have allies, than face them alone later." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's military forces were impressive by human standards, but they had been designed to fight other humans. The Vorthak represented something entirely different, a species that had evolved for millions of years with only one goal in mind. "Captain." Morrison activated the tactical display showing Earth's current military assets. "We have the Pacific Fleet, with its 12 heavy cruisers, the European Defense Force with 8 destroyers, and the American Deep Space Navy with 6 battleships. That's our entire interstellar capability, against an enemy that has already consumed 17 civilizations." The decision came down to a vote. Each member of the emergency council had to decide whether humanity would risk everything to help their alien friends. The vote was unanimous. Earth would answer the call for help, The selection process for the mission began immediately. Colonel Ryan Parker was chosen to lead the expedition, his reputation for tactical brilliance making him the obvious choice. At 38, he had commanded successful operations in 3 different conflict zones on Earth. His ability to adapt quickly to new situations would be crucial when facing an unknown enemy. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks volunteered for the mission within hours of the announcement. Her expertise in demolitions and sabotage had made her a legend among Earth's special forces. She had never failed to complete a mission, no matter how dangerous. Her team would be responsible for striking at the Vorthak's most vulnerable targets. Sergeant Major Kevin Stone was recruited personally by Colonel Parker. The 2 men had served together in the Australian Defence Force, where Stone had earned a reputation for his deadly hand-to-hand combat skills. He could kill a man with his bare hands in 17 different ways, but more importantly, he could train others to do the same. Dr. Carter worked around the clock to analyze the limited information they had about Vorthak technology, the enemies. Bioships were unlike anything humans had encountered. They seemed to be part machine, part living organism, with the ability to repair damage and adapt to new threats. Traditional weapons might prove useless. Against such targets, the hastily assembled fleet gathered in Earth's orbit as final preparations were made. The ships were loaded with every weapon system humanity could provide: nuclear missiles, plasma, cannons, electromagnetic pulse devices, and experimental quantum torpedoes. Each vessel was also equipped with emergency self-destruct systems, just in case capture seemed inevitable. As the fleet prepared for departure, Captain Morrison received one final transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld. Ambassador Kithera's voice was weaker now, filled with exhaustion and approaching despair. Human friends, if you are truly coming to help us, please hurry. The Vorthak have reached our outer colonies. We estimate 48 hours before they arrive at Ethros Prime. Our children are evacuating to the deep shelters. But there is nowhere to run. You are our last hope. The human fleet activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the void, carrying with them the hopes and fears of 2 species. Behind them, Earth continued its normal rotation, unaware that its most dangerous sons and daughters were about to face an enemy that could determine the fate of all life in the galaxy. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and immediately faced a sight that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The 4th planet, once a thriving world with billions of Zephyrian colonists, was being consumed by massive bioships that looked like giant insects feeding on a corpse. The ships pulsed with organic light as they stripped away the planet's surface, converting everything into raw material for their war machine. Commander Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Defiance, watching the horror unfold. Through the main view screen, the Vorthak vessels were unlike anything in human military databases. They moved with fluid grace, their hulls seeming to breathe and shift as they worked. Smaller craft swarmed around them like antibodies protecting a living organism. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the enemy fleet," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her sensor station. "Their ships are reading as part biological, part mechanical. The power sources appear to be fusion reactors integrated directly into living tissue." Turner nodded grimly as he studied the tactical display. The Vorthak armada numbered in the hundreds, each ship larger than anything in Earth's fleet. But size wasn't everything in space combat. Humanity had learned that lesson well during their own wars. "All ships, this is Commander Turner, weapons free. Target the smaller vessels first. We need to see how they fight before we engage the larger ones." The first shots of the battle came from the Earth destroyer Valkyrie. Captain Jenny Walsh had volunteered to lead the initial attack, her fighter squadron already launching from the ship's hangar bay. The plasma cannons lit up the darkness of space as they struck the nearest Vorthak interceptor. The enemy ship absorbed the hit without any visible damage. Within seconds, its hull began to glow with the same energy signature as the human weapons. The Vorthak vessel had somehow analyzed and adapted to the plasma fire, making itself immune to that particular weapon type. All units, switch to kinetic weapons, Walsh ordered over the COM system. These things can adapt to energy weapons. Use bullets, missiles, anything that hits them physically. The battle quickly became a nightmare of close-quarters combat. The Vorthak fighters moved with impossible speed, their pilots showing no regard for their own safety. They would ram human ships if it meant taking them down, treating their own lives as expendable resources. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks watched from the weapons control room of the cruiser Thunderbolt as her missile batteries engaged the enemy. The Vorthak ships were fast, but they followed predictable patterns. Each one moved as if it were part of a larger organism, responding to some central command that humans couldn't detect. "I've got an idea," Brooks said to her weapons officer. "Sergeant Mike Reynolds? These things are coordinated, right? Like a hive mind, what if we target whatever's giving them orders?" Reynolds pulled up the sensor data on his screen. "There, ma'am, that large vessel in the center of their formation. It's not firing any weapons, but it's broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Could be their command ship." Brooks smiled grimly as she targeted the vessel. "Let's see how well they coordinate without their queen bee." The missiles struck the Vorthak command ship with devastating effect. Unlike the smaller vessels, this one couldn't adapt fast enough to the multiple impact points. Its hull cracked and began venting atmosphere, or whatever the Vorthak breathed. The effect on the enemy fleet was immediate and dramatic. The smaller ships began flying erratic patterns, some even colliding with each other. Their perfect coordination had been shattered with the loss of their central command node, Lieutenant. Colonel Dan Foster saw the opportunity and seized it. His battalion of Space Marines had been waiting for their chance to board enemy vessels. Now, with the Vorthak in disarray, he gave the order to launch assault pods. The boarding action was unlike anything the Marines had trained for. The interior of the Vorthak ship was a maze of organic corridors that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. The walls were covered in a substance that looked like hardened mucus, and the air was thick with spores that made breathing difficult even through their sealed suits. Sergeant Lisa Murphy led the first squad through the narrow passages, her assault rifle ready for anything. The Vorthak defenders were waiting for them, 7-foot-tall creatures with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. They moved with insect-like jerky motions, their compound eyes tracking every movement. The first alien warrior charged at Murphy with a sound like grinding metal. She put 3 rounds center mass, but the creature barely slowed down. Its natural armor was thick enough to stop most small arms' fire. Murphy dove to the side as the alien's claws slashed through the air where her head had been. "Aim for the joints," she shouted to her squad. Their armor has weak points where the limbs connect to the body. The close-quarters fighting was brutal and exhausting. The Vorthak showed no fear of death, pressing their attacks even when mortally wounded. Their alien physiology meant that human soldiers had to learn entirely new ways of fighting. A shot that would kill a human might only wound a Vorthak. Private Tony Garcia found himself face to face with one of the creatures in a narrow corridor. His rifle had jammed, leaving him with only his combat knife. The Vorthak warrior towered over him, its 4 arms spread wide as it prepared to tear him apart. Garcia did something the alien didn't expect. Instead of backing away, he lunged forward, getting inside the creature's reach. His knife found the soft spot between its arm plates, and dark fluid sprayed across the corridor walls. The Vorthak let out a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe as it collapsed. The battle for the command ship lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 17 human Marines were dead, but they had captured their first Vorthak vessel. The information they gathered from the ship's organic computers would prove invaluable in understanding their new enemy. Major Kate Robinson led the technical team that analyzed the captured technology. What they found was disturbing. The Vorthak weren't just using biological ships, they were part of them. Each vessel was a living organism with the alien warriors serving as its immune system. The ships could heal damage, adapt to new threats, and even reproduce if given enough raw materials. "This changes everything," Robinson reported to Commander Turner. "We're not fighting ships. We're fighting living creatures that happen to be the size of battleships. And they're getting smarter with each encounter." The human fleet had won their first engagement, but the cost was high. 3 destroyers were severely damaged, and over 100 crew members were dead or wounded. The Vorthak had been caught off guard, but they were already adapting to human tactics. As the human ships moved deeper into the system, they could see the next challenge ahead. The Vorthak main fleet was waiting near the inner planets, and this time they would be ready for the strange new enemy that had dared to challenge their perfect war machine. The news of the first battle reached Earth through emergency communications, and what the military leaders learned changed everything about their approach to the war. The Vorthak weren't just another alien species with advanced technology. They were something far more dangerous, a perfect biological war machine that had evolved over millions of years for one purpose only. General Marcus Bell stood in the secure briefing room beneath the Pentagon, studying the combat footage that had been transmitted from the fleet. The images showed human Marines fighting creatures that seemed to come from humanity's worst nightmares. The Vorthak warriors moved with inhuman speed and showed no fear of death, pressing their attacks even when mortally wounded. "We need to level the playing field," Bell said to Dr. Helen Carter, who had been working around the clock to analyze the captured alien technology. "Our soldiers are brave, but they're still human. They get tired, they get scared, they make mistakes." "The Vorthak don't have those limitations." Carter nodded as she pulled up classified files on her tablet. "I've been thinking the same thing. We have Project Nightfall, but it's never been tested on this scale. The risks are enormous." Project Nightfall had been developed in secret over the past 5 years as humanity's ultimate contingency plan. The program involved genetic modifications that would enhance human soldiers beyond normal limits. The volunteers would gain increased strength, faster reflexes, and the ability to interface directly with advanced weapon systems. But the process was dangerous, with a 30% fatality rate among test subjects. "What about the psychological effects?" Bell asked. "The last batch of volunteers showed signs of increased aggression and decreased empathy. We could be creating monsters." "Maybe that's exactly what we need," Carter replied grimly. "The Vorthak don't understand mercy or compassion. They're biological machines programmed for conquest. Perhaps we need to become machines ourselves to defeat them." The call went out to military bases across Earth. Volunteers were needed for a classified mission that would require them to undergo experimental procedures. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of soldiers stepped forward, knowing they might not survive the process, but willing to risk everything to protect humanity. Captain Steve Collins was among the first volunteers. At 28, he had already served in 3 combat zones and earned a reputation for his tactical brilliance and fearless leadership. He understood the risks, but also understood what was at stake. If the Vorthak weren't stopped, Earth would be their next target. The modification process took place in underground facilities on Mars, far from Earth's population centers. The volunteers were injected with a combination of synthetic genes and nanotechnology that would reshape their bodies at the cellular level. The lucky ones survived the first 24 hours. The unlucky ones died screaming as their bodies rejected the foreign elements. Collins woke up 3 days later feeling like he had been hit by a truck. Every muscle in his body ached, and his vision was strangely sharp. He could see details in the room that had been invisible before. When he tried to stand, he moved faster than he intended, nearly crashing into the wall. "Easy there, soldier," said Dr. Patricia Wong, the lead scientist on the project. "Your nervous system is still adjusting to the modifications. You now have reflexes that are roughly 3 times faster than normal human standards. Your muscle density has increased by 40%, and your brain can process information at an accelerated rate." The training period was intense and brutal. The enhanced soldiers had to learn to control their new abilities while mastering weapons. Systems that were far more advanced than anything previously used by human forces. They could move through combat scenarios at speeds that made them appear as blurs to normal observers. Collins found himself leading a squad of 12 enhanced soldiers, each one a volunteer who had survived the modification process. They called Themselves, the Nightfall Squad, and they were humanity's answer to the Vorthic's biological superiority. Their enhanced reflexes allowed them to predict enemy movements, and their improved strength meant they could use weapons that would have been impossible for normal humans to handle. The first real test came when the squad was deployed to retake a Zephyrian colony world that had been captured by the Vorthok. The enemy had established a breeding facility on the planet's surface, using captured aliens to create more warriors for their expanding army. The mission was to infiltrate the facility and destroy it from within. The planet's surface was a nightmare landscape of organic structures that pulsed with alien life. The Vorthak had transformed the once beautiful world into something that looked like the inside of a giant organism. Breathing tubes as tall as buildings carried nutrients to different sections of the complex. While defensive creatures patrolled the perimeter, Collins led his squad through the twisted corridors of the breeding facility, their enhanced senses allowing them to detect Vorthok guards before they could sound an alarm. The first alien they encountered never knew what hit it. Collins moved with inhuman speed, his combat knife finding the creature's weak spots before it could react. The deeper they went into the facility, the more disturbing the sights became. The Vorthok were using captured Zephyrians as raw material for their breeding program, converting them into new warriors through a process that was both horrifying and efficient. The sight of the alien prisoners being transformed into their captors, soldiers filled the human soldiers with a cold rage. Sergeant Lisa Murphy, one of the enhanced soldiers, had to fight back the urge to vomit as she saw what the Vorthak were doing to their prisoners. The aliens were being kept alive during the conversion process, their minds intact as their bodies were reshaped into something alien and hostile. "We need to move faster," Collins whispered to his squad. "Every minute we delay means more prisoners are converted." The squad reached the facility's central chamber, where they found the source of the Vorthek's breeding program, a massive queen creature that was part organic factory, part living computer. The creature was the size of a building and constantly producing new warriors from the organic matter fed to it. The battle to destroy the queen was unlike anything the enhanced soldiers had faced. The creature could spawn defenders faster than they could kill them, and its mental abilities allowed it to coordinate attacks with terrifying precision. But the human soldiers had something the Vorthak couldn't understand: the willingness to sacrifice themselves for an abstract concept like freedom. Collins made the final charge himself, carrying enough explosives to level the entire facility. The Queen's psychic scream as it died sent shockwaves through the Vorthik network across multiple star systems. For the first time in their species' history, the Vorthak had encountered an enemy that could match their ruthlessness while fighting for something greater than mere survival. The enhanced soldiers had proven themselves in combat, but they had also changed in ways that concerned their creators. They were more aggressive, more willing to use extreme violence to achieve their objectives. They had become something between human and machine, perfect soldiers for a war that demanded nothing less than total commitment. The war had raged for 8 months when Earth's intelligence networks finally located the source of the Vorthik Empire's power. Deep in the Andromeda sector, hidden within a system of dead stars, lay Vorthik Prime, the original homeworld where the species had first evolved millions of years ago. The planet was more than just their birthplace. It was the central nervous system of their entire civilization. Lieutenant Colonel Brad Johnson stood in the briefing room of the flagship Retribution, studying the holographic display of their target. The planet's surface showed no signs of normal life. Instead, massive organic structures stretched across continents, pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns they had seen on enemy ships. The entire world had been transformed into a single, massive organism. Intelligence estimates that the central consciousness controlling all Vorthok forces is located somewhere in the planet's core, reported Major Nicole Adams, the mission's strategic planner. If we can reach it and destroy it, the entire empire should collapse into chaos. The plan was ambitious beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Every available ship would be committed to the assault, along with all surviving enhanced soldiers. The mission would either end the war or result in the complete destruction of Earth's military forces. There was no middle ground. Colonel Mary Davis commanded the space battle from the bridge of the battleship Vengeance. Her tactical genius had kept human forces alive through dozens of engagements, but this would be her greatest challenge. The Vorthak home fleet numbered in the thousands, each ship larger and more advanced than anything they had faced before. All ships, this is Colonel Davis. Remember, we only need to hold them long enough for the ground team to reach the core. Every second we buy them is worth a dozen ships. Make your shots count. The space battle began with a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Human ships emerged from hyperspace already firing, their weapons targeting the massive bioships that defended the planet. The Vorthak response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy beams that could vaporize a human destroyer swept through space, while living missiles sought out their targets with deadly precision. Captain Tom Baker led the ground assault team as they dropped toward the planet's surface in heavily armored pods. The enhanced soldiers had been equipped with experimental weapons designed specifically for this mission. Their target was a massive structure near the planet's north pole that intelligence believed housed the central consciousness. The planet's surface was unlike anything in human experience. The ground itself was alive, responding to their footsteps with waves of bioluminescent pulses. Massive tendrils emerged from the soil, trying to ensnare the soldiers as they advanced. The air was thick with spores that would have been lethal to unmodified humans. Stay together and keep moving, Baker ordered his team through the CUM system. This entire planet is one big organism. The longer we stay in one place, the more defenses it can bring to bear. The advance toward the central structure took them through a landscape of living architecture. Buildings that breathed, roads that shifted to block their path, and defensive systems that grew from the ground itself. The Vorthak had turned their entire world into a weapon designed to repel any invasion. Sergeant Amanda Clark, one of the enhanced soldiers, made the crucial discovery that would change the course of the battle. As they fought through yet another wave of organic defenders, she noticed something strange about the enemy's coordination. The creatures were hesitating, showing signs of confusion when faced with acts of self-sacrifice. "Captain, I think I've figured something out," Clark reported. Over the CUM. "These things can't understand why we're willing to die for abstract concepts. Their hive mind is built around survival and expansion. When we act against our own survival instincts, it creates feedback loops in their system." Baker immediately understood the implications. All units, new tactical approach. Make your actions as illogical as possible from a survival standpoint. Charge when you should retreat, sacrifice valuable equipment, put yourselves at risk for no tactical gain. The strategy worked better than anyone had hoped. The Vorthak defenders began making critical errors as their central consciousness struggled to process human behavior that made no logical sense. Soldiers who should have fled instead charged into overwhelming odds, creating chaos in the enemy's decision-making process. The assault team reached the central structure after 6 hours of continuous fighting. The building was enormous, stretching deep into the planet's crust. Its walls pulsed with neural activity, and the air inside was thick with the electrical discharges of a vast alien mind. The descent to the planet's core was a journey through the nervous system of a godlike entity. The corridors were lined with neural tissue that sparked with thoughts too alien for human comprehension. The team could feel the weight of the central consciousness pressing against their minds, trying to understand and control these strange new variables in its perfect equation. At the planet's core, they found what they were looking for, a massive chamber filled with organic computing systems that had been growing for millions of years. The central consciousness was not a single entity, but a collective of billions of individual minds that had been merged into one overwhelming intelligence. The battle was not just physical but mental. The alien consciousness tried to dominate the human soldiers through sheer psychic force, flooding their minds with images of their inevitable defeat. but the enhanced soldiers had been trained to resist such attacks. Their modified nervous systems could withstand pressures that would have driven normal humans insane. Captain Baker made the final assault personally, carrying enough quantum explosives to crack the planet's crust. The central consciousness spoke. To him directly, its voice echoing in his mind with the weight of eons. "You cannot destroy perfection. We are eternal." "We are inevitable." Baker's response was purely human. "Watch us." The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. The planet's surface cracked like an eggshell as the central consciousness died, its death scream echoing across the galaxy through the Vorthic neural network. Every hive ship in space suddenly stopped moving, their crews no longer receiving orders from their guiding intelligence. The victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 3,000 enhanced soldiers who had volunteered for the mission, fewer than 200 survived the assault on Vorthak Prime. The space battle had claimed half of Earth's interstellar fleet. But the war was over across the galaxy. Vorthak fleets turned on each other as different factions tried to establish control. Without their central consciousness to coordinate them, the perfect war machine collapsed into chaos. The species that had conquered 17 civilizations was destroying itself in a matter of days. The surviving human forces watched from their damaged ships as the Vorthak Empire tore itself apart. They had achieved the impossible, but the cost had transformed them into something their creators might no longer recognize. They were no longer the same species that had first answered the Zephyrians' call for help. 6 months after the fall of Vorthak Prime, the galaxy was a very different place. The scattered remnants of the once mighty empire had fragmented into dozens of smaller groups, some trying to rebuild their civilization while others continued fighting each other for control of the remaining resources. Without their central consciousness to guide them, the Vorthak had proven to be surprisingly adaptable, with many groups developing individual personalities and goals. Admiral Chris Thompson stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Space Station Unity 1, watching as ships from a dozen different species docked at the massive facility. The station orbited the former Zephyrian homeworld of Ethros Prime, which had become the unofficial capital of the new Galactic Alliance. Representatives from every surviving civilization had gathered to discuss the future of their shared galaxy. The Zephyrians had been among the first to recover from the war. Their crystal cities were being rebuilt, and their population was slowly growing again. Ambassador Kithara, now bearing the scars of the battles she had survived, served as the primary liaison between the alien species and their human protectors. She often spoke of the debt her people owed to Earth, but Thompson knew the relationship was more complicated than simple gratitude. "Admiral, the morning briefing is ready," reported Captain Lisa Gray, Thompson's aide and one of the few enhanced soldiers who had chosen to remain in active service. Her modifications were still visible in the way she moved, with reflexes too fast for normal humans and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. The briefing room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. General Marcus Bell had arrived from Earth to discuss the establishment of the Terran Protectorate, the new military organization that would prevent another galactic genocide. Dr. Susan Lee presented her final report on the psychological effects of the war on both humans and aliens. "The enhanced soldiers pose a unique challenge," Dr. Lee explained to the assembled delegates. "They were created to fight a war that required them to abandon many aspects of their humanity. Now that the war is over, they struggle to find their place in a peaceful society. Many have chosen to remain on frontier worlds, using their abilities to protect new colonies and explore dangerous regions of space. Major Jack Turner was among those who had chosen the frontier life. He commanded a small outpost on the edge of the galaxy, where his team of enhanced soldiers kept watch for new threats. The modifications that had made them perfect warriors also made them outcasts in normal society. They were too fast, too strong, and too willing to use violence to solve problems. "We've become something between human and legend," Turner had written in his last report to Earth Command. "The galaxy tells stories about us now. Some call us heroes, others call us monsters. Maybe we're both." All I know is that when the next threat comes, we'll be ready for it. The political situation was complex and delicate. Earth had emerged as the dominant military power in the galaxy, but the other species were uncertain about human intentions. They had seen what humans were capable of when pushed to their limits, and that knowledge created both respect and fear. The Altarian Republic had been the first to formally request human protection. Their peaceful merchant culture had been devastated by Vorthak raids, and they lacked the military capability to defend themselves against the remaining enemy factions. In exchange for protection, they offered their advanced manufacturing technology. And trade networks, the Kepler Collective had taken a different approach. They had studied human military tactics and begun developing their own enhanced soldier programs, though with limited success. Their biology was too different from human physiology for the modifications to work properly. Instead, they focused on creating advanced weapons and defensive systems based on captured human technology. Captain Steve Collins, now serving as the commander of the Enhanced Forces Division, oversaw the training of new recruits who volunteered for the modification process. The program had been refined since the early days of Project Nightfall, reducing the fatality rate to less than 10%. But the psychological screening was more rigorous, designed to identify individuals who could handle the mental changes that came with enhanced abilities. "We're not creating soldiers anymore," Collins explained to a group of new volunteers. "We're creating guardians. Your job isn't to win wars. It's to prevent them. The galaxy has seen what happens when peaceful species can't defend themselves. We exist to make sure that never happens again." The most significant change was the development of individual consciousness among the surviving Vorthak populations. Without their central intelligence to suppress individual thought, many of the former warriors began developing personalities and emotions. Some groups actively sought to make amends for their species' past actions, offering their biological technology to help rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. Dr. Patricia Wong led the research team, studying these transformed Vorthak. Her work revealed that the species had originally been peaceful, much like humanity, before they were subjected to genetic modifications by an ancient artificial intelligence. The central consciousness that had controlled them for millions of years was itself a creation of a long-dead civilization. "We may have saved the galaxy from repeating a cycle that's been going on for eons," Wong reported to the Galactic Council. "The evidence suggests that this pattern of a peaceful species being transformed into conquerors has happened before. Our victory may have broken a chain of destruction that stretches back to the dawn of civilization in this galaxy." The establishment of the Terran Protectorate was formalized in a ceremony attended by representatives from 47 different species. Earth committed to maintaining a military force capable of responding to any threat to galactic peace, while the other species agreed to support the infrastructure needed for such a massive undertaking. The ceremony was held on the anniversary of the first Zephyrian distress call. Admiral Thompson read the names of every human who had died in the war, a list that took over an hour to complete. The enhanced soldiers who had survived stood at attention throughout the entire reading, their modified physiology allowing them to remain motionless for hours without fatigue. As the ceremony concluded, a new transmission was received from the outer rim of the galaxy. Another species was calling for help, this time from mechanical invaders that seemed immune to biological weapons. The cycle was beginning again, but this time the galaxy was ready. Captain Collins received the mission briefing with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the war. His enhanced soldiers would deploy within hours, carrying with them the reputation that had made humanity both feared and respected across the galaxy. They were no longer the same species that had first ventured into space, but they had become exactly what the galaxy needed: protectors willing to become monsters so that others could remain innocent. The stars held new threats and new challenges. But the galaxy finally had guardians who understood that sometimes the price of peace was the willingness to be absolutely ruthless in its defense. Earth's most dangerous children were ready to answer the call, no matter how dark the path ahead might be.